understand you. Take all anxiousness and anxiety away from the mind and the body and the soul. Let all humbleness and understanding come our way, Father. And in Jesus' name we pray and we say, amen. Today's reading is coming from James chapter 1, verses 19 through 21, and I'm reading from the ESV. I'm not a loud person. I don't do much yelling, so if you struggle with hearing, you might want to scoot a little closer. That ahead of time. This is James chapter 1, verses 19 through 21, and it reads, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of a man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word which is able to save your souls." Today's title is Irreversible Damage. Today's book, a little bit of background, we have James, the writer of the book of James, the half-brother of Jesus, who was a leader of the church, of the early church. He was known as a wise and courageous peacemaker. He's writing to the 12 tribes that are scattered. During this time, James had become a pillar of the church due to the fact that the Jewish Christians were being persecuted heavily by their own people. His writings were heavily influenced by the Sermon on the Mount and the first 9 chapters of Proverbs. We're gonna focus in on this first verse. It is, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear." Other versions will say listen. "Slow to speak and slow to anger." Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. I'm using Doc's method. I like the way he does it with his iPad, so I'm using his method. Listening. I would give it the notion that it is a godly thing. It is something that we humans are only capable of for the first part of our lives. As a baby, we use 46% of the time we are using our listening skills. 46% of our upcoming is listening. 46. That's half, more than half. Before we're able to speak, before we're able to walk, we're listening, taking things in subconsciously, and then eventually acting out upon what we have taken in. Listening is, by definition, is to hear something with thoughtful intention. I would say this is why it's heavy on the quick to listen. Thoughtful intention takes you to stop talking, to stop thinking, and to hear what another person has to say. Thoughtful attention is to pay attention to each and every individual word that comes out of someone else's mouth. This also is to use the word comprehension. It is one thing to absorb something and throw it out the window, and it is another thing to understand it. I'm gonna let that simmer for a second. It is an inward and outward form of humility. It is one of the most notable or noticeable forms of humility. A humble person is always great with listening. Doc, you're a wonderful example of that. I don't know how he listens as well as he does, but I talk to his ear off, and he just be sitting there, yeah. And I'll be like, I don't know how you do it, because it's hard, I'll say, when you have a mindset that you overthink everything. So you automatically in your mind, if you are not a person who holds stuff in and allows it to build up, want to say everything that you think. It is a good and a bad thing. If you are a listener that listens well, but also is a problem solver, that means you're listening to find the best solution that fits the problem seamlessly. It is healthy. It is a wonderful thing. It is a great thing. But Also, when you're a great listener, you're slow with your words, not to provoke the person that you're with to anger. Because sometimes we think, we're great listeners, and then as soon as we give a response, we make the person that we're giving a response to extremely upset. We're like, well, I thought I heard it the right way. And they're like, no, you didn't. You just butchered the whole idea of what I was telling you, and now they're upset and angry, and now you're arguing. Bickering back and forth about ideas, beliefs, political systems, whatever you want to talk about in life, because you didn't listen properly. But then there's the listener who has a prideful heart. The listener with a prideful heart causes rejection of the interlocutor, which is which by definition the interlocutor is the person that you're talking to or the group of people that you're talking to. The prideful heart, prideful by definition, the Greek word is tufu. It is to be lifted up with pride, or to be high-minded, which is to be puffed up. Selfishness at its core. Selfish. Ask yourself the question, are you selfish? Your first answer is no, I'm not a selfish person, because nobody wants to be that way. But if you ask someone else, or your wife, or your spouse, or your friends, or even people who don't like you, let's be honest, the truthful opinion of how they view you, the word selfish might come about. Why is this? It's because you're not reflecting as well of what he instructs us to do. There's too much of you involved into the situation, and now you're not a good listener. And then not being a good listener, you're also prideful in the inside because you're not willing to accept constructive criticism. And without being able to accept constructive criticism, your response is quick, always defensive about everything. Always defensive about everything. And then in that defensiveness, you then provoke the person you're with to anger. But not only do you first become angry, you cause damage to someone else. Why does it say slow to anger? In verse 2, it says, for the anger of a man does not produce the righteousness of God. The anger of a man, other versions would say human anger. This is to say all of mankind. Does not, there's nothing in it, nothing you can convince yourself of that would justify you being angry on your own terms, because it's not of God. The Greek word for anger is orge. It is known by definition the strongest of all passions. It signifies quivering with emotions or man's wrath. Human anger is not only dangerous to yourself health-wise, if you take the time to look it up, but it is also dangerous to others. Anger, where does it come from? It can stem from a sense of intense emotions, fear. Write these words down if you're a person that writes these down so you can understand where this is coming from. Fear, frustration, pain. But it can also result from stress, unresolved grief, trauma, something very heavily in the minority community, trauma. Too, because we put ourselves in bad situations but don't want to accept that either. Adverse childhood experiences, ongoing struggles, ancestral trauma or oppression, the feeling of helplessness, mental illness. Anger causes these illnesses: headaches, digestion problems, abdominal pain, insomnia, increased anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, eczema, a heart attack, and even stroke. Anger. Let's deal with the trauma side first. What are you still holding on to that makes you boil over the minute you hear? It's as if someone flipped the light switch and the lights immediately came on and then you immediately became upset. What is it? Look, take a moment to dig inside yourself and find what is that. How much more harm have you caused by being upset and angry at rejection or because you haven't healed a past trauma than if you would have just healed the issue from the jump? How many of you waited until you got married, then lashed out because you didn't know it was in there, because you didn't take the time to heal? Hurt your spouse, the one you're supposed to presume to, or the one you're supposed to or expected to love with everything, but you damage it, or her, or he, or your children, or your friendships, your parents, your siblings, your grandma, the stranger on the street. We're supposed to be Christians here, right? But we, as minorities, or as a people, as a human race, tend to not want to deal with our problems. This anger, how much problem has this caused for you generationally? This anger, I'm not used to hearing so much feedback, because majority of it is people trying to listen and hear it out. I love silence sometimes because it's beautiful, because I understand that a person is listening. What have you caused? Anger does not only affect you health-wise, but it hurts the person that you take it out on. Anger. Is it righteous? Is it worth being mad about? Is the trauma so detrimental that you're so afraid of going back to deal with it? The book of James, the first chapter, and specifically this half of the text, teaches about being a doer, not just a hearer, for what is faith without works, but a doer. That is to say that there is action upon what you believe in, and if you claim to be a Christian or a believer of God or a disciple of Jesus in any manner or form of way, then why aren't you living as such? Why can a person look at you, your life, and your interaction with them and not see you? Why is every time someone pushes you the wrong way or pushes you a little too far or makes you feel uncomfortable by a simple word or phrase that you lash out? Anger hurts. I'm gonna give you my a little story here. I'll give you my story. Matter of fact, a little short snippet of it. I'll give props to my father. He didn't know what he was doing in the long run when he had me do this. I most of my life, including now, well, younger, I struggled with anger. I was very short-tempered. You can say one thing and I will, just like that, touch me in the wrong way, insinuate, make the wrong face, and I would blow up. As a kid, as a child, I was 8. My mom would go garden a lot, and she would always try to drag us with her. And I did not want to be outside. I just didn't. It wasn't my thing at the time. So I would get so upset. I mean, there's instances to where I can recall, like me being at school, and I get so upset, I punched dents into metal lockers before. My hands are very messed up. But in this instance, I got so upset. My dad said, okay, there's a stump in the backyard, untouched, unbothered. Go grab the axe, and every time you get mad, chop at the stump so we can get it gone. I don't care how much anger my 8-year-old body had. I couldn't get that stump out the ground. Watch this. You guys immediately looked at the fact that I couldn't move the stump, but there's a lesson behind it. With each swing of the axe, I damaged the stump. The topic is irreversible damage. So every time that I got upset, I had to go back and look at how badly messed up was that stump. Look at the stump as the person that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. I'm looking at it, and this is what caused me to stop being so upset or be more patient or build up. Because while I can exhort the energy on other people, instead I took an axe, which was, why would you give an 8-year-old an axe? But anyway, took the axe, cut out the stump. The stump would not come up. Eventually I have to have it professionally removed. But looking at it every day, somewhere in my mind triggered me. Somewhere along the line I learned the lesson that my father was showing me without even knowing he was teaching me, a lesson that it is better to get rid of the anger than to hold on to it, but not only get rid of it, but in a healthy manner. Cutting at the stump wasn't the healthiest way, so eventually I stopped cutting at the stump. I stopped chopping at it. And what I began to do was when I got upset, I would say, hey, this is why I'm upset. In my 8-year-old brain, it could have been anything, but this is why I'm upset. And I took it, figured out why before I spoke. I listened to myself first. Listening is a great tool. You should learn it with yourself first. Understanding where from and what is the point of getting angry in the first place. And then that constant picture of a chopped up stump and envisioning it as the people that I dealt with for years hurts. I have a lot of generational problems in my family. Anger is definitely one of them. But learning God at a young age, my dad didn't know that putting a Bible in my hand when I was younger would have caused me to be here. Instead of taking my time to chop out a stump, I took the time to open the book. Right? And this opening that book started the process of getting rid of a lot of trauma. A lot. I mean, overwhelming amounts. I still to this day I'm struggling and dealing with, but now that I have a tool that never goes away, I always have something to access, right? Verse 21. Verse 21, it says, therefore, put all filthiness and rampant wickedness, put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, and receive with meekness in the implanted word which is able to save your souls. This word here, put aside, or other versions say put aside, this one says put away. The Greek word for this is, I can never say it right, apothemai. It is to put off oneself. It is used when mentioning the removal of a garment. That's the actual definition that it uses for this particular piece of text. But when you look further into the definition of it, it's mainly used when removing a garment. Put away all wickedness. Okay, we'll put it like this. Take off the old and dirty rags of hurt, pain, trauma, sorrow, regret, depression, anger, anxiety, narcissism, whatever causes you ill will for the future. Because anger is not just, the action upon anger is not just temporary, it lasts with you for a lifetime. Why does it say put it aside? Take it off, get rid of it. How many of you have had a relative, some of you probably haven't, that you were so upset with, and that it seemed that you can never forgive them, and then you got that phone call, and they're gone. You guys might haven't, but I've been in too many situations. My grandfather abused my mom when she was younger. Sorry, Mom, I'm putting your information out here. But we traveled up to Texas when he was on his deathbed. I was 9 at the time. First time ever in Texas is why I don't know how I ended up living there, but the anger that she had could never lead her to developing a relationship before he was gone to better understand him. So how bad do you think it hurted to see your father holding his hand as he died? Because I got a chance to hold his hand too. I never met the man because my mother was so angry. I never got a chance to know who he was. And he never got a chance to know God because she was so angry. That anger that is take off, that wickedness that is telling you to take off. If you take that off, and then he says, receive with meekness. The Greek definition of meekness, it's parutz or perios. It is its meaning does not only consist with the outward behavior. It is a temper of the spirit with accepting God's dealings with us without disputing or resistance. The word is closely linked to humility. Oftentimes, with meekness, you immediately replace it for humility. The same with you and your connection to accept what God has for you. If my mother at a young age was able to, or at an older grown age, was able to take off her own self and accept and get vulnerable, and sometimes it takes for us, I'm a mover, I already let you guys know, I'm gonna sit down right here. To sit down, right? Naked and afraid, vulnerable, sitting there and having a real discussion with God, one-on-one. And this is so heavy for me. Taking the time out to develop a relationship, because the education is to put on meekness, which was implanted by God's word. To take the time to go on have any of you seen War Room? Show of hands? Great. Prayer closet. Make one. Beautiful thing. But if we take the time to get vulnerable, naked, and afraid, I'm going to keep using that word. Vulnerability is such a hated word in the black community, the white community, the world in general. Vulnerable. Completely open about everything and honest. And talk to him. Break down, hey, Lord, I'm having struggles with this, and that. Nobody else knows about it because I go to church and I dress nice and, I'm put on a front for the world. I look like I'm clothing you, but in reality, I'm still clothing them old garments. So now, Lord, I'm accepting you because I'm getting vulnerable and naked, and I want you to not only, which he already does this, implant in our hearts meekness, a better understanding, a strong connection that does not resist him. But not only that, but like you said in Ephesians 6:11, to put on that armor that you have, so that the next time, when another instance occurs, when another person comes at me and triggers me the wrong way, that I don't get upset and angry to where I hurt them and I traumatize them for the rest of their life. To where when I get into relationships, if that person is broken and they're coming to me, I'm not broken because of them, but I'm able to heal them because they don't see me, they see your armor shining off. How much does God have to humble you for you to get to that point? Because it feels a lot easier when you do it yourself. Because when he do it, I'm pretty sure a lot of you didn't had the wet stain on the carpet with the snot dripping out the nose, and then you get up, you like, man, I feel good. And then even though you look ugly because you didn't crowd up a storm, but you feel good. The ability to be vulnerable is a healthy thing, something that we should teach our children. Something that I hope if I have children one day, that I can teach them. When do we give up on ourselves? Because ultimately, sometimes that anger that we build up is dealing with ourselves sometimes. Oh man, I didn't make my work quota. Oh man, I should have took more time to do this. And then eventually you're building up, and then you'll start to hate yourself. Because you feel that you are incapable of, which you are. That's honest. You are incapable of. That's why he tells you, put that armor on. So that in your weakness, my strength is made perfect. It's a constant battle. It really is. And I feel for the church, my home. I call it home. I don't really call it the church. This is where I was raised. It's home. It's home. It's where I choose to stay. It's where I choose to abide. It's where Jesus called me his friend. It's where he sat down with me and laid out a blueprint of who I really am. And he said, you know what, son? Like he did with the woman with the issue of blood, that everybody just labeled the woman with the issue of blood. They never said her name. He said, son, as he called her daughter. gave me meaning and purpose, gave us, you, and all of you in the crowd, purpose. And he gives you that purpose. He gives you the time needed to fulfill that purpose, and then along the way you stumble. But upon that stumbling, like even Peter, when he was walking on the water, began to look at the problems around him and fell short. He reached down, and he keeps picking us up. You're able to leave him, but he never leaves you. How much mercy is that? Are you ashamed to call him Abba? Are you ashamed? If you are, and some of you are like, no, well then, how many people have you invited to know this God that you know? How many times have you held your tongue when it came to speaking of him? How many times did you feel that deep regret after you walked away from a person that you know needed to know him? I would call that ashamed. If you are. If you are. Take upon his meekness, his yoke, for it is light, and it is easy, and it provides rest. He says at the end of verse 21, receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. This James insinuates or reassures us that in doing so, removing an anger from us, not only believing, but doing and acting on that faith and taking off our old rags and getting vulnerable with him, and then putting on the new rags. We don't call them rags, that new piece of beautiful fine linen. Because I'm proud. I'm real proud to know that I got God. Once we do that, and then we continue every day, because it's a choice. It is. It's a choice every day to continue to choose him, to continue to share his word, to continue to talk about him, to not be afraid to talk to the people of this lowly world of ours about who he is. It's a choice. And every day you must make the choice to be a doer of the word, so that in the end all be all, you don't have to go to God and be like, well, I did this and that. And he like, no, you didn't. You did that for yourself. You didn't do that for me. So that at the end all be all, you don't even have to explain yourself. He's like, okay, that homeless person on the side of the street, you made sure they had something to eat. That widow who lost her husband, you made sure that her and her family was okay. That brother or sister who was battling with depression, even though you didn't know about it, you checked on them and comforted them like I commanded you to. You helped the least of these. So now when you come to this gate, and the end all be all, the man who saves, the mighty Jesus, he says, good job, faithful servant, you have done well. Some of you haven't got a chance to know him, or know people who haven't got the chance, and there's people online. Jesus is the perfect example, literally the perfect example of everything that is here. From the beginning to the end, the whole book is a love story. Wouldn't you like to fall in love again? Wouldn't you like to know what real love is? In the words of Mary J. Blige, real love. I'm searching for a real love. And if I tell you today that there's a man who was put on a rugged tree and that was mocked for you, and that was the embodiment of humbleness, that became the least of these, those who are first shall be last, and those who are last shall be first, to be the greatest of these for you, so that you can continue every day when you mess up to say, hey, Lord, I'm actually trying. This is not me just making another excuse. Can you forgive me today? so that you can have those intimate moments and you can bust down in tears and break down, your body quivering and feel good after. The man who walked up a hill and was crucified and then died and then rose again. The perfect embodiment. Will you take the opportunity to know him a little better? Would you take it? This is a choice every day to let go of that anger and to put on him and to accept him and to love him and to choose him, to deny self. How much better would it have made you feel if the person, instead of lashing out on you, said, hey, I understand. I'm not angry with you because you're angry at me, but I understand. Sometimes all we need is somebody to understand. And we got that. How much are you willing to accept that you have that and give it to somebody else? That's all I have today. But the invitation is here.
Let us stand. So be the way.